Like most artists, I have piles and piles of drawings. From my embarrassing first sketchbook filled with even more embarrassing drawings of characters to some more decent-looking work. I filled sketchbooks like journal entries, and I was content, for the most part. But I have to go back a couple of years when I began this journey with art. Some years ago, early into my art training, I was driven by after I study this, I'll finally be able to make the art I want. It was as if, after going over this one hurdle, I'd never need to go back and study it again. I know, it's foolish. However, new art fundamental after another art fundamental and after another, I soon began doubting if I ever really was an artist in the first place. I wondered why the fundamentals I was learning weren't adding up, weren't amounting to something. I have to admit, it's kind of humorous to think that a 17-year-old girl suddenly had an early quote-unquote art identity crisis. But here's the thing. My perception of art back then wasn't really well-rounded. I suppose, like a lot of people, I tend to put complex ideas and concepts in a box I can conveniently refer to as the definition. Until earlier last year, all of the art I consumed, saw on social media, wasn't the kind of style I even wanted to emulate. I didn't think too much of it at the time. I just kind of ticked off the box, "Look at art today," off my to-do list. I wasn't asking myself what art I wanted to influence me in the right way. Don't get me wrong, I loved looking at the art I saw on social media. Beautifully designed and stylized characters, artists like Loish and sketches of Shay were all absolute sweet treats to my eyes. They were wonderful. But underneath all of that wonder, I began comparing my current work to theirs. See, humans are visual creatures. Don't ask me from what source I got that from. This isn't a research paper. We are easily influenced by what we see, I think. I know I'm not alone in this. Just watch Lord of the Rings for the 100th time. I know I'm going to pretend I'm on a quest to throw a ring into Mordor when walking my dog. The same goes for the art we see. If you aim for a more traditional style and you're constantly seeing traditional style paintings, then it's natural you'd want to emulate that too. Anyways, I'll get to the point. A lot of artists my age are creating these fun and stylized artworks. It all had such an effect on me that I suddenly felt from the very beginning that my goal was that style. I tried and tried, but I never felt connected to it. At a last blow, I remember sitting in my bed with a tub of cookies and cream ice cream in my hands while crying over the realization that I could never be like them, the fun, amazingly composed fight scene artworks kind of artist. The one with character lore deeper than the Pacific. In contrast to the other artists my age, I preferred studying anatomy, doing master studies, obsessively breaking down a complex object. I once spent weeks studying trees, and being an absolute nerd about proportions and different art theories, principles, and fundamentals. My comparison to the kind of art I loved doing stemmed from exactly that. I don't have a super stylistic art style, and I never felt like I truly wanted it. I suppose I just went down the foolish rabbit hole of, well, it's what everyone my age is doing. I guess that's what's for me too. I don't think I'm alone in this. The misconception that once I finish studying everything there is to know about being the best to becoming an artist, then and only then will I be satisfied and finally be an artist. You see, My definition of an artist at the time, even though I was also decently knowledgeable about traditional fine artists, was the stylized kind. I suddenly began feeling out of place, like I do in school, then even in the arts. But one day at said school, when my fellow artist friend came up to me to ask about head proportions and what tips I could give her about her head drawings, it changed everything about my perspective. It wasn't the first time I taught my artist friends about what I know. I often do during lunch breaks or when they're drawing next to me, asking me for some advice. My inner art nerd took the reins and began drawing her diagrams and some examples. I realized that was it. That was my thing. I like complex anatomical breakdowns, I like obsessing over the smallest details in my drawings, and I like studying art. I honestly love studying art. It was honestly quite a bit of a shock that I had to go through 5 years to realize my thing in the arts. I am the one who likes to do all of these studies, and for some reason, I always felt like that was a weakness, that it held me down somehow in my creativity. But that's the thing. Who's to say what is categorized as creative art and non-creative art? There's this misconception and a bit of debate in the art world that realism isn't true art, or that realistic drawings aren't creative, or traditional drawing techniques hold back creativity. But really, creativity is ultimately dependent on the artist. You see, I don't think it's how an artwork ends up looking. It's how the artist created it. The decisions they make, how they design certain shadow shapes, how they compose an image, that's where their creativity lies, where our creativity thrives. I used to base how much creativity an artwork has on its overall end result look, but I encourage you, when you're in a museum next time, really look at an artwork. Ask yourself what decisions this artist made that led to the final painting you're looking at. Observe the way they use their brush, the way they design their shadow and light shapes, the colors they decide to use, what mood are they conveying. Connect with the artwork with this. In this way, you, like I did, will see the subtle differences in their creative decision making. Some shout their creativity, and that's admirable. And of course, I'm not at all undermining one art style or art medium above the other. But I think it's time we hear a little bit of noise from those whose creativity is a little more subtle. Old masters, let's take someone like Picasso and Sargent, I guess. Give them a vase to draw and you'll end up finding they both have different creative decisions, not style. Different creative decisions. Is the other more creative than the other? Of course not. They both have their own decision-making processes, so why should we judge that one is above the other? In all of this, after 5 years of constantly chasing the wrong goal, I finally realized that this is it. This is the goal. Fully being immersed in studying specific things, asking myself what I could do differently in my study process, and connecting with the artists I'm studying, that's it. I don't need to follow what others do. I think we all have our voice to shout in terms of making art. Maybe you don't have to chase a goal. Maybe the work you're doing right now is the goal. Getting work or having your artwork acknowledged by thousands of people might seem glamorous and romantic, but I think those are just add-ons. What you need to focus on being at peace with right now is what you do differently that makes you stand apart from others. And like me, maybe it's a little bit quiet, even unpopular. I used to say it's just a study, thinking it was an art, but it is. It is a study, with my vision of it, with my intentions. Of course, I have a very long way to go. But for now, I'm just happy that I'm finally at peace with how I express my creativity. Although others might see it as plain, obsolete, maybe even lacking originality, saying that maybe I just copied it, but I think I just express my creativity a little more quietly than most. Mine is mostly between lines, little shades of charcoal and numerous studies of anatomy or some such other subject. This might sound preachy, but I had to learn how to not put one art style above the other in terms of how creative it is. Of course, that's not to say you can't have preferences. You should have preferences. That's what you need to hold on to help you navigate where you're headed. but please be sure that it is genuinely you, that it is genuinely from you, that it's truly yours. If you like stylized artworks, continue making them and consuming them. If you like realistic artworks or fun anatomy breakdowns, then continue doing it. Just please remember, creativity is what you make it.